From Software is amazing. Even if you don't agree with that statement, you can't argue that they have cornered the market on ball-bustingly hard, amazingly detailed, deep, lore-ridden games. You know their names well. Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, Demon's Souls, and now Elden Ring. This company does not need a formal introduction. However, the problem with fame is that a lot of people tend to focus on what made you popular in the first place, or, barring that, they think what you did in the past isn't worth it because it obviously can't be that good if no one's talking about it. And while this idea is mostly up to speculation, at the very least I can say it happened to old Softie. Now, this isn't completely true. You've probably seen videos on a lot of From Software's older back catalog. I know Nitro Rad has covered Kuwan and Echo Knight, for example. And you've probably have at least heard of Kingsfield and Armored Core, the latter being the company's flagship franchise until Dark Souls took over. The thing is, you've observed these games. I doubt many of you got off your butts to check it out. And there's so much more that the average fan would ever know. So, because I guess I have nothing better to do with my life, I've taken up the journey of chronicling From Software's back catalog. There are going to be some ground rules, however. First off, I'm only covering franchises that were released in America or had a significant American presence. For example, I'm covering Kingsfield 1 and Echo Knight 2 despite the fact that those games were never released in America simply because the rest of the franchise was released over here. So why not pick up those games as well? That also meant if Metal Wolf Chaos XD didn't exist, I planned on covering that game anyways just because its English fanbase would rip me to shreds if I didn't. Second off, I will do my best not to cover any spin-offs, but I will cover direct story expansions. This mostly applies to Armored Core. Dear God, Armored Core. Armored Core has a lot of expansions and sequels to every game in its canon. That makes it a nightmare for me, but it makes it much more easy for you to watch. Ironically, we will have to break this rule when we reach the only game of a non-FromSoft franchise. Finally, I'm not covering anything once we hit Demon's Souls, which means no Dark Souls and no Bloodborne. Because this entire show is to dive into the interesting parts of FromSoft's history, and I'm not even remotely qualified to talk about those games. So don't ask, got it, wise guys? Well, with that finally out of the way, we're starting with the Genesis, the Alpha and the Omega, the original Kingsfield. Now, as far as I can tell, the original Kingsfield had a very quiet launch despite its technical prowess. It was indeed one of the first PS1 games, one of the first first-person games on said console, and one of the first RPGs on that console. Safe to say, I'm getting excited! Before we begin on this worldwide adventure, I should probably talk to you about how you can procure this game for yourself. There are two main versions, the original Japanese PS1 release and a completely remade version from the ground up that comes part and parcel with the Sword of Moonlight creation tool. Apparently, the very same development kit that From Software used themselves. If not, at the very least, the software was released by From Software, and the remake is the sample project that comes on it. I will not be playing this version. I will be sticking to a translated PS1 version. Give me jank. Give me clunk. Give me Kingsfield, god damn it. Speaking of the original version, according to reviews, the game was very polarizing. Some people said it was one of the best games at the time, and others bashed it for being a confusing and cryptic mess. Well, there's only one way to figure that out. Now, something I want you to notice, according to every place I found and my own file size, the original Kingsfield is up there with Doom for how little space it takes up on the hard drive. Which has already put my mind in a bit of a screw considering most other launch PlayStation games had file size in the hundreds of megabytes, something I've come to expect. Even Rayman, which was 2D compared to Kingsfield 3D, is bigger. I don't know whether I should be impressed or worried. Well, heaven or hell, let's rock. We pop the game into our charts, assault the play button with the mouse, plug in my PS3 controller, and we can start this magical journey together. From Software's first ever video game, the birth of the beauty, of the difficulty, and the sensation. Feast your eyes on the majesty! Yeah, this was the first Shyamalan twist I was hiding from you guys. This game looks like shit. it looks genuinely awful. The animations are horrible. I mean, look at the snakes! They don't slither! Look at that! And oh my god, none of the NPCs have faces. Watch out everyone, it's the invasion of the Face Snatchers! Okay, in all seriousness, this was one of the first 3D first-person console role-playing games of all time, if not the first. I can forgive the janky models and lack of animations. I can even accept the black N64 fog in the back as in my opinion, it adds to the atmosphere. And yeah, sure, today the game looks like a 3D version of Boo! Haunted House. I can imagine at the time a lot of these monster designs and textures were skin-crawling and atmospheric. I mean, that'll last until you see the bedsheet ghosts, but most of this I can and will forgive. What I won't forgive is the surprising lack of textures in the game. Almost every area has its own dedicated texture to differentiate it, but it will have only that one texture. Normally I would look past something like this, but it will actually affect gameplay. I'll get to that later. Another thing I should talk about is the music and the sound design. Honestly, I love a lot of the game's sound effects. Pulling out your blade sounds metallic and sharp, like metal scraping against its scabbard. Enemies can sound ridiculously creepy, and you probably will be spooked a good few times upon hearing a completely new enemy sound, or what the hell was that? Hell, even your magic spells have a nice little bit of beef to them. The music, however, is a mixed bag. The first stage theme is okay, one could even say it's a little creepy with its droning, elongated beats and strings. The second one sounds like a MIDI for an old Doom Megawad circa the year this game came out. The third song is an opening theme, and it feels nice and dramatic for what that's supposed to be. The fourth did an Amber Heard and shit the bed as it sounds like a Spyro level, I'm not even kidding. At least the fifth level finally comes back to the atmosphere that the first level had, although by that time the first two changed to something much more dark and foreboding, so the music doesn't stay the same at least. However, each song is only about 1 to 2 minutes long, and you'll be spending hours on each floor. It does start to get grating after a while. So, what the hell are you doing? Why is Long John Silver down here poking snakes with a railroad spike? Well, the game does have a text crawl before you begin, and it does explain the story in the manual, which is amazingly translated. I can't find the person who did it, sadly, but this was on CD Romance. According to the manual, in the country of Verdite? Anyways, there was a massive war and many people died, and a hero rose to save the day. He disappeared, leaving only a prophecy that he will bring magic artifacts back. A sanctuary was built to honor him. After that, a new clan took over and made their leader king, turning the sanctuary into a royal graveyard, and then they started hunting for the supposed magical artifacts. You play as John Forrester, swordsman and son of House of Forrester, I hope I said that correctly, the commander of the guard. While John was training in another country, the king had sent multiple groups of the guard to go into the sanctuary and try and retrieve the artifacts. None returned minus the commander himself, who went back in to save his men. Turns out, touching magic stuff you don't know what it will do is a bad idea, and monsters have arrived. Fearing for his father's safety, John heads in to save him. Okay, so I didn't know he was actually called John. Most of this is just backstory, but it does give you a good reason why you're here, and the manual introduces you to many characters and items as it can, and guides you onto your very first gameplay goals. However, since this game only has about 5 levels, why don't we take a tour on each and every single floor and run you through the general experience of playing this. Before you even begin the game, there's something strange. You'll notice that throughout the whole introduction, there's no menus. You boot into a new game every single time. So every time you start up the game, you're gonna have to slap the X button a bunch until you get to the main game, and then go into your pause menu to access your load menu. Efficient! So now we start the game on the first floor, and the first thing I noticed about John is he's slow. I mean really slow! He only walks, his sword swing is a pitiful chop, and he has the magic spam capabilities of a fledgling wizard. Well, this doesn't bode well for him. I carry on and enter the first room to my left, which I find that you can interact with practically every prop in the game world. Chairs, beds, barrels, corpses. Sometimes they'll have useful equipment or items, sometimes they'll have nothing but a funny description. While in this room, I notice a weird outline on the back of the wall. So I go in and wall hump it, and what do you know? It's a false wall. And just beyond that is a chest and a skeleton! We do battle! And he totally whips my ass. Just like in Dark Souls, the first skeletons you meet are overpowered assholes. This might be a good time to talk about some of the game's mechanics. The first thing you'll notice is that fighting feels kinda bad. First off, your attack is pretty slow, as we have mentioned. This isn't a bad thing, as it is perfectly serviceable for this type of slow dungeon crawling game. What is bad is that almost every single enemy in the game can attack faster than you and probably has longer reach to boot. As you can probably tell just by looking, telling if you're in range to attack is a bit of a pipe dream. But I did learn that pretty much as long as you're within the first half of the attack animation, you will hit so long as you walk within range. But none of that matters so long as you keep getting hit. So what do you do to dodge? Well, that's where the best part of the controls comes in. Pressing either shoulder button will have John strafe left or right, and you can use this to slip past the enemy's attack and get in the hit for yourself. So you're essentially playing by classic Yeast rules. Attack from off center, and if they have their back or side to you, take every opportunity to punish them for it. This ultimately is pretty serviceable combat, and you do kinda get into a rhythm eventually. And yes, I say rhythm because you can't spam attacks. I mentioned Yeast before, and now for another classic action RPG. Your attack is based off Secret of Mana rules, aka your power bar at the top here must be full to do any realistic damage. The only truly awful part of the combat is there's no real indicator that you've hit. No blood or sparks or anything, something to show that you actually connected. I mean, sure, the enemy jitters around a little bit and makes a noise, but that's not enough. And to be perfectly honest, this all falls apart if you're surrounded or facing multiple enemies. So don't. This isn't a game where you should try to be an action hero. You're alone down deep in these catacombs, surrounded by monsters, and you don't have much health, defense, or offense to share. Getting hit will hurt, and every hit adds up eventually. And everything poisons you! I swear, every enemy on the roster has an attack that has a random chance of inflicting a status ailment! And if you die, and on your first playthrough, you will, the entire game resets. You go back to square one. Nah, I'm kidding. Yes, indeed, the game resets if you die, but there are crosses that act as save points and you can load the save. However, this does lead to the classic Dark Souls problem. If you find a key item, do you progress forward or do you double back to save? You could die if you progress forward, or it'll take longer if you go back to save. There is one universal exception to this rule, but I'll get to that later. Enemies only respawn in small numbers after a certain while, so backtracking isn't too terrible, but you still have to go through some enemies. There is one saving grace to all of this. one lonely light to guide your way through the ever-blackening abyss that is the catacombs. John can use magic. Look how impressive it is! Jokes aside, magic can be an incredibly useful ability for taking out enemies at range, killing the otherwise untouchable ghosts, juggling between magic and physical attacks to stun lock enemies. Oh yes, you can animation lock your enemies this time. They can't lock you, but you can them. However, be warned, young warlock, because magic is finite and there is but one MP item you can use to refill it. And even then, it's best saved for another proper use. This is a good time to tell you about the horrific user interface for this game. It tells you nothing, except your current stats and what you have. Items and equipment have no stats, nor descriptions to tell you what they do on their own separate pages. This is a bigger problem than it sounds. Some things are easy. A medicinal herb heals you, an antidote herb takes away poison and also heals you, and a recovery medicine heals both that and paralysis, and heals more than the medicinal herb? But what does the dragon tree fruit do? What does the phantom rod do? You may not know without wasting them. Now, about equipment having no stats. The game usually follows a set path. The more powerful it is, the lower it will be on the list. That's all well and good, but sometimes you'll pick something up and it'll be sucky. Like the blood mask, which yeah, gives high defense, but also drains your health and takes away a bunch of strength. You wouldn't know that unless you were paying attention to your health and realized something was amiss. The only way to check your stats is to equip an item, back out to the stats menu, check that out, go and equip another item and compare the stats. It's such a pain in the ass. Finally, I can talk about the level now, and it only took most of the damn video. Honestly, this first level is the one you'll spend the most time on because it's the tutorial level. It never outright states anything, but you'll be baptized by fire to learn combat, you'll learn that skeletons are huge dicks, and you'll learn that you should investigate anything and everything to get your first few missions. On this floor, you need to recover the deceased key, turn back on the dragon spring, and disarm the trap stopping you from getting to the second floor. Those were said in levels of necessity. You need the deceased key to get around most of the first catacomb. You won't find it in the level, no, it's being held by the priest. He wants his cross back, and it's being held by the rather shifty Gil, one of the two shopkeepers in the game. So this is the first of two instances of forced grinding in the game, and hopefully by the time you're done, you'll have found better equipment and items. And oh yeah, don't buy equipment in this game. There's nothing you can buy in the shops that isn't free on the battlefield, so check everything and anything and only use your money on recovery items. Eventually you'll find a golden cup and hey, kinda looks like the dragon spring, right? So you bring it back there, right? Nope, your ass actually has to walk across the entire map to go to the dragon temple and put the golden cup in a recess there. Like you would know to do that. Once that is done, voila, you have your only permanent respawn point and MP refill station here. Now if you die holding a piece of dragon tree fruit, you'll be taken here instead of restarting the game. But if you didn't make any significant progress, you might as well restart, so you have to walk all the way where you died. Dragon tree fruit can also be used as a full heal, thank the humanities in Dark Souls, but much like humanity, there's better things it can be used for. Another thing you'll want to keep an eye out for is Illusionary Walls. These things generally contain some good items, sick loot, etc. Now technically you can find them by wall humping the entire game or using the phantom rod, but if you pay close attention, you can see a little outline and a line on the floor. Once you know the tells, you'll see them practically everywhere, even though wall humping isn't that slower than normal walking, so it's up to you. No, I can't test if it's that easy to spawn real hardware. I can't play this game on real hardware, damn it. Once you have the deceased key and turn on the dragon springs, you can go back to the top of the map to press a button that turns off the arrow trap blocking you from leaving. If you have enough items and equipment, on to floor 2. Now that I made that entire statement, you might think exploration is a piece of cake, right? Well...
No, it isn't.
You see, these places are mazes upon mazes. Now, I have a pretty damn fine sense of direction if I say so myself, and I do, but even I would get lost in these labyrinths from time to time. You are eventually given a map, and it works for every single floor so you don't have to keep finding new ones. The problem is that the map doesn't tell you everything. In fact, entire chunks or levels are missing from the Keeper's map entirely. As a matter of fact, nearly all of level 4 is missing. Now, there is a magician's map that shows you everything, and it really reveals the true horror of how labyrinthian these levels can truly be. Plus, you need to find keys, you need to find items, and there'll be all the cryptic stuff on top of all of that. It's almost a weird Metroidvania, but the bare minimum to call it that. I'll explain later. Floor 2 is your first introduction to the ghosts and these plant bastards. Ghosts are normally not a threat, they just kind of float wherever they please, they don't chase you, or if they do, I never noticed, and they only hurt you if you stand too close for them to too long. They'll inflict minimal damage and darken your vision, which is annoying but not unworkable. These plant fuckers though? Fuck them right in the little fucking hole they have. They're incredibly fast, hard to dodge, are surprisingly durable, and come with a lot of their other spawn. Speaking of spawn, here you'll learn that the enemies have a bizarre form of scaling. If an enemy appears on the floor, then every time it shows up on the next floor, it will be stronger than its first appearance. Take these head ripper dudes. These things I was almost instant killing on the previous floor now have enough hit points to nearly kill me. This level also starts introducing cryptic bullshit. Your two goals here are to get the harp that lets you raise platforms so you can cross bottomless pits, and get the 2 seals on the level. However, doing that will only take you through about 40% of the level. The rest is either optional or locked behind the dungeon key. Where do you get the dungeon key? In a random room guarded by a plant bastard for some reason, is tucked in his own little corner and is a bit more difficult than the rest. If you persevere, you'll get the green dragon rod, an item that makes backtracking a hell of a lot less painful as it takes you to the entrance of your floor, and healing magic, which is invaluable in a game like this. Floor 3 is the most simple and least confusing of all the floors in the game. Most of it has 1 or 2 side rooms or challenges for you to overcome. This is also where you learn from the king before last, Randolph VIII, that the current king is the one supposedly raising the monsters, and now your goal becomes to take them out. Other things along your way are new keys, new magic, and breaking the goddamn game in 2. Listen, FromSoft, I really wasn't trying to break Kingsfield, I promise! But this is one of the most glaring and obvious secrets I've ever discovered in a game. In one of the hallways of the prayer tower, you'll find a strange hidden room with a T-shaped layout and a locked chest right at the front. Almost as if it was beckoning you to check out the other side, you should do so, and when you do, you'll find the second best weapon in the game, the Triple Fang. It is the 4th hardest hidden weapon in the game and has passive HP and MP regeneration. Oh yes, you can still die easily if you're not paying attention, but now the game becomes so much easier, it's not even fair. Because of this sword, I never died in combat for the rest of the game. The game was effectively over. I have become Death, Destroyer of FromSoft. Not only that, but this is the floor you can finally equip some good armor, and even if you miss the Triple Fang, you're egged on to find the Flame Sword by Randolph, which hits just as hard as the Triple Fang, but doesn't have HP and MP regen. You're also going to pick up some offensive magic that isn't your Light Needle, a Fireball and something called a Wind Cutter, which is about as weak, but it hits multiple enemies. Your goal here is to collect the last of the seals and unlock the prayer tower. Although I think I glitched my games out because I unsealed it with only 2 seals. I got the others anyways. So after I was Sparta'd off a bridge trying to walk around the ghost, you'll wind up on the 4th floor. Damn the 4th floor. It's not necessarily long, confusing, or hard, it's just boring. Here your goal is to loop around the entire map to finally get your hands on the best boots in the game, the feather boots, so you can finally walk over bottomless pits you've been seeing everywhere. Along the way you have spider rooms, pick up a ton of verdite, fight golems on golems, and get wrecked by a seriously impressive boulder trap. You also start unlocking shortcuts to other floors. My major complaint about this level is that, for the last floor, a battle with a black swordsman was hyped up as your first proper boss fight. Only for your dear old dad to kill him off screen. Oh yeah, and they traded kill, so he's dead too. Once you get the feather boots, it's time to reclaim your father's sword, the Dragon Sword. And it's nearly useless. Yes, it has MP regen like the Triple Fang, and it technically hits harder, but its power regenerates so slowly, I'm sure I could do more damage over time with my fists. To be completely fair to this floor, you're not cucked out of a boss fight. Near the end, you'll find these annoying clay-throwing monsters and something shooting darkness-inducing fireballs at you. Enter the room and you'll find the Dark Magician, who goes down like a bit. Why can't I move? Why can't I move? What am I hearing? Oh, Jesus Christ, throw everything at it! Did I mention the wind cutter is extremely good for crowd control? Moving on to the 5th and final floor. The final floor is nothing but pure combat. You have these lich things that the magician turned into, shooting fucking nuclear bombs at you. You have these devil things blinding you with darkness, and more armor sets throwing shit that you can't see because of the darkness. This is nothing more but a pure gauntlet, and it serves as a test on how well you've mastered Kingsfield up this point. Me, myself, and I didn't have any major issues, barring a few close calls on health and mana, and 2 more invisible bridges. Great. Oh, and these ones are compulsory, you can't skip them. However, your first real goal is to access the final dragon door. Throughout the first 3 floors, exploring secret walls may have revealed hidden doors that you seemingly had no way to access or open. No key nor item would get them to budge. This is all tied behind a hidden mechanic. As you leveled up and gained more stats, you notice new titles on the status bar. These are useless until you reach the coveted Sword Master rank. Now you can unlock the dragon doors, and you can apparently use special magic with certain items, but come hell or high water, I could not figure out a way to use these pissing magic spells. I tried casting magic without any equipped. I tried pressing every button combination I could think of. I even went back to the 3rd floor and tried to collect the secret I looked up, but nout. If you know how to use the spell, please leave a message about how I'm a hack at Kingsfield. Anyways, upon entering the final dragon door, you'll meet a fairy that you've already met on the 2nd floor, and her, in this game I believe, unnamed dragon master turned the dragon sword into... the Moonlight Greatsword. Or just the Moonlight Sword in this game. Faster MP regeneration compared to the Triple Fang, high damage output, and even faster power regen. This is the ultimate weapon in the game. But wait, if the ultimate weapon was found behind the dragon door, does this mean the other ones hold the ultimate equipment too? Of course it fucking does! Welcome to the final merry-go-round. You have to painstakingly walk back to the first 3 levels and find these needle-in-a-haystack dragon doors. Now, personally, I was lucky enough to find the first 2 by accident and commit them to memory and stumble on the 3rd one, but if you weren't that good at spotting the tells or you happen to forget, you can scrounge the floors looking at every nook and cranny hoping to find your way through this inky blackness, all while nothing can harm you because you're rocking endgame stats. Nothing can slow you down because you can kill it in a few hits, if not outright, and you have no directions to go because all of them are hidden behind the invisible walls! And yes, I said go to the first 3 floors because nothing in this game hits that just because you found all this equipment that there isn't a dragon door on the 4th floor. The only reason I didn't search for it is because I already had all the best equipment in the game. So finally, after all the cryptic mazes, difficult combat, and annoying music you've gotten through, you're finally at the final boss arena. You start off surrounded by high-powered devil monsters on all sides who of course shoot more nuclear bombs at you. My advice is take them on one at a time and do not aggro them all or you'll be staring at the first floor before too long. Once you whittle them down, heal up, munch on some dragon fruit, and learn the king has been taken for granted. Walk down a long bridge and you'll come face to face with... oh god!
Somebody beat you with the ugly stick!
This is the heavily mutated form of the king's son, who once again has gone unnamed. And this shows that even in their first outing, FromSoft were the masters at fucking body horror. The fight, however, isn't nearly as terrifying. You can't hit him with physical attacks, so your only recourse is magic. But he gets stun-locked from your shots, so I kinda stun-locked him to death. Munch on Dragon Tree Fruit and keep shooting him, and there's nothing he can really do but stand there and take it! Eventually, the big bad falls, the door of darkness is sealed, I guess, and John is made king for his heroic efforts, and I'm finally done playing Kingsfield. If I were to collect my thoughts, I would say it's an absurd jank fest that requires the player to have a ton of patience, curiosity, and willpower to uncover the truth of what happened down in the royal catacombs. But in the end, I also think the game had a certain charm to it. It's not that brutally difficult once you learn how to properly fight enemies, and learning the game's secrets the first time is incredibly rewarding. The balancing is broken in all sorts of ways, but it's a damn first attempt. And let's not forget this is one of the first games for the PlayStation, so when your competition is mostly arcade games, this game's a bit of a technical marvel. And yes, I knocked the graphics for looking silly in a serious game, but sometimes they work really well in a strange, creepy, Lovecraftian sort of way.
Like, I don't know what I'm looking at, but that makes it all the more creepy.
All in all, would I recommend Kingsfield 1? Not immediately. It's a janky piece of crap that can only come out of the launch of a 3D system, and despite the charm, I don't think most players will care to finish it. But if you want to see where FromSoft learn how to spread their wings and fly, or if you just like seeing janky PS1 launch shenanigans, I say why not? I mean, the game is technically not really quasi-freeware anyways, where's the harm in trying? Now, apparently the sequel, on the other hand, Kingsfield 2, or just Kingsfield here, was a major improvement as everyone talks about this game instead. So, logically, that'll be next up on Before Souls.